0025_R.
Yes, the statement is admitted.
And Ms Mendelle, can I just seek to confirm with you whether you have read Ms Whine's statement?
Yes.
And to the extent that her statement covers matters related to the Australian Cohesion Forum, of which you are Managing Director, do you agree with the matters stated in that document?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms Whine, you've mentioned that you're one of the co-directors of the Australian Cohesion Forum, and I think you also hold within that organisation the titles of Program Delivery Lead and also Jewish Community Liaison, is that right?
That's correct.
You founded that organisation together with Ms Mendelle?
Yes, we did.
And is it right that Australian Cohesion Forum is a not-for-profit and entirely volunteer-run organisation that was set up to facilitate effective intercultural partnerships with culturally diverse communities within Australia?
That's correct.
And I'll ask you and Ms Mendelle a bit more about the work of the organisation shortly. Ms Whine, prior to establishing Australian Cohesion Forum, you had been involved in grassroots advocacy supporting specifically the Jewish community in the wake of the 7th of October 2023, is that right?
Yes, that's right. I set up a grassroots group called J United to support our community after October 7.
And can I ask, what made you decide, as it were, to shift from the Jewish community specific advocacy space into an organisation that was focused more on intercultural engagement across a diversity of communities?
It was quite a natural shift because for all of the things that we had done in the lead up to setting up the ACF, we had multiple communities coming along. So initially we started with an activation in the city with shoes and balloons and posters about the hostages, and multiple people came up to us to ask us what had happened. They hadn't heard about it in the mainstream media, and we had ambassadors talking to them, and we could see that there was real interest in speaking to us and understanding what had happened. Later our group set up a Walk for Unity. We had that at the King's Domain. We had the Hindu community attend, we had members of the Iranian community attend, various communities just attended and spoke. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get into the city at that time. We were told by police that we weren't allowed as a safety risk. And that was the closest place that we could get to into the city. And while we were there, people had just shown up. We had speakers that were organised, but then groups like the Iranians showed up with their flags and people didn't know who they were, so we would walk up to them and we'd ask them like, hi, who are you? And then slowly have built a relationship with them over time from that point. We did things like a Challah for Unity with one of the synagogues. We brought in people from various cultures along at each table with a Jewish person to explain what was going on and how this was our bread and how we have it on the Sabbath, and that was like a huge success. And then through that work, Roz and I kept sort of bumping into each other. She's in Brisbane, I'm in Melbourne. We kept hearing about what each other's work was. And then we discussed, how could we work together? How could we expand this beyond our community? And we started talking about what is it that everyone's doing. We don't want to be in anyone else's patch. We don't want to do what everyone else is doing. We want to fill a gap. And so we came up with the Australian Cohesion Forum and the programs that we run.
Ms Mendelle, can I come to you? Are you able to tell us about your own background, perhaps personal and then also professional, particularly your background working in the area of multicultural engagement?
Well, I grew up in Israel and I moved here 8 years ago with my wife. We met there. She was born in Australia. And we met, it's very cliche, we met in Tel Aviv during Pride, which I don't normally go to Pride, but we met there. And we fell in love, and then we moved to Australia together and had our children here. So my children are Australian, which is never something I ever would have imagined. And they have Aussie accents, even though they're so small. And back in Israel, I've always been a huge believer in the capacity of people to humanize each other and work together. And talk to each other, and I'm a big talker. So in university already, I was involved in a lot of reconciliation programs, sort of Palestinian Jewish or Arab Jewish reconciliation programs. I also volunteered for settlement organizations when Israel received a massive influx of Sudanese, South Sudanese, and Eritrean refugees. I worked with a settlement charity and got to know these amazing people so well, and how far they walked across the desert to reach our gates and to come in. And Israel, along with all of those really beautiful positive things, I am a survivor of terror attacks, and I was a direct survivor of a violent hate crime in Israel. I got away. It was really lucky. It was a carjacking that deliberately targeted us because I was a Jewish female and I was out not on my own, but only with one other person. And I survived that attack, and I survived that attack thanks to being rescued by Arab Israelis. So that is the beautiful, complex nature of Israel. And so carrying all of those experiences, I came to Australia, and I was immediately hit with how gloriously amazing the multicultural life is here. Meeting Hindu and Indian origin Australians was amazing for me, because we don't have many people like that in Israel. And just seeing all the different cultures and all the Asian cultures here as well, I just loved it. And I felt like Australia is the place where the whole world is your friend and you can access every kind of culture. And my career is communications, mostly in tech. I work with startups. And then October 7 happened, and like many of us, I watched the Hamas live stream, the gleeful live streaming of the murder and rape of people that I knew, people that I recognized. And in watching that live streaming, the first thing I remember is seeing the happy and heart emoji responses on the live streams, and seeing that a lot of the users that were doing these happy reactions were actually also based in Australia. And shortly after that, with the protest movement starting even before Israel responded, and the wave of hate that hit us like a ton of bricks, I connected with the Jewish community and I started to assist in events. And in doing so, I immediately noticed, like Simonne, the other cultural community members who were showing up for us without being invited, without being asked, without us demanding it. They just would show up, and we wouldn't even know who they were half the time. I mean, Taiwanese people would show up, and of course the Iranians, the Iranian diaspora, and specifically now my dear friends Azin Nakibi and Hessam Orji, they would just show up for every event. And of course the Hindu community. So I immediately realized that this is the trick. This is what needs to happen. To come back to this beautiful dream where everyone is working together. These are the people that I need to expand relationships with. And so in a variety of ways, we started to do that. I was helping with all kinds of events here in Brisbane. The first event I think we did was an impact net. We brought together Hindu, Iranian, and Jewish community members, each to share about inner workings of their communities and how we can work together. And I truly can go on and on. I wasn't kidding when I said I was a talker. So
maybe I'll come to Ms. Whine. Are you able to tell us about the background of the members who make up the Australian Cohesion at the ACF board?
Board, yep. So the background of our board is a multi-ethnic group of 5 women. So you've just met 2. And the others are a Yazidi woman, a Hindu woman, and an Iranian woman.
And from the time that ACF started, which I know was only in the last 12 months or so, what kind of appetite or demand have you seen for the kind of intercultural engagement activities that it's offering?
Yeah, there's been a big demand for what we've been doing because, as I said earlier, we're trying to fill a gap and not reinvent the wheel of what anyone else has been doing. We work with, and again, people have come to us and found us through what we've done previously. We work alongside many organisations. We've got a First Nations partner organisation, Building Strong Families Foundation, a number of Hindu groups, the Iranian groups, Buckets of Hope, like various different groups that we work with. And we work on a real partnership model. So it's not we dictate anything or tell anyone what we should be working on together. We liaise with people and we do collabs and survey them and find out what are the challenges and the needs within their community and how can we help. So we realise that a lot of people are working in an allies an allies model. Our model is more of a partnership model where we figure out what it is that the challenges are for people and then we work on projects together.
And the collab that you've just referred to in that answer, is that the Cohesion Lab framework that you've described in your witness statement?
Yes.
Paragraph 23. Are you able to explain the structure that Cohesion Lab framework has taken, at least so far, in terms of co-design of initiatives between cultural communities?
Yeah, so we've run a number of collab frameworks and they're structured in a consultation with a survey. We survey the group, we ask specific questions, and then we get them also to rank at the end of it what it is that's most important to them to work on. And then we come up with solutions together, either connecting them to other people for guidance or actually creating something ourselves. Our first series was held with the Hindu community leadership, which has led to a major initiative that we'll be launching in the next few weeks, which is a hate reporting app. So that will be with established Hindu organisations, and it will transform how the Hindu hate crimes and intolerance are actually reported and recorded within their community.
And Ms. Mendelle, I might ask you to comment on another project that's been described in Ms. Whine's statement, which is the Living Archive. What has that involved so far?
Well, I'll preface that by explaining that when we started to have meetings with a broad range of community representatives across Australia, so that would include South Sudanese, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, even Samoan community groups. Of course, Hindu, Iranian was our sort of bread and butter at that point. We had really good established relationships. And what we realized is that many of the existing programs in the multicultural space are very prescribed. So they're very sort of top down, as in an organization will come in with a program and they will expect community groups to adopt it. Whereas we wanted to do something that was fully collaborative, agile, and that the qualitative data that would emerge from it would be then analyzed in a really flexible and agile way to find what actually the community needs and then help them build their capacity. So with the Hindu community, that was really amazing because we had such great relationships. So we were able to meet with over 26 Hindu community leaders, and then also something like 50 or 60 Hindu community members as well attended the Melbourne consultation, and to collect data from that even during the session. And the other one that is rolling out right now is we are doing our Cohesion Lab framework with our First Nations partner, which are the Building Strong Families Foundation and their Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander network. And I say Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander because literally the Bowie family, the father is Torres Strait Islander and the mother is Aboriginal, so they're truly a beautiful mix. And with them, it's taking a completely different form to what the Hindu consultations did, because the way that they do things is very different. And because we are able to be agile in that way, we're meeting that need. So with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community, we're having a variety of meetings in different standpoints on different topics, and we're recording this data on those needs, and we're helping them build capacity to roll out tools like community calendars or filling these gaps. With my communication skill set, that includes web and design and things like that, I'm able to provide those things pretty easily, but we connect other experts where we need to. And the Living Archive tacks on to that because we realize that so many people have not heard these stories. So many people have not heard a South Sudanese survivor story.
I might just interject there. When you say these stories, the Living Archive, can you just take a step back and explain what stories are being told through that project and through what mechanism are they being collected?
Once we started working with communities, we realized that many of them carry stories of survival, of resilience, especially if it's refugee communities, South Sudanese survivors who walked across the desert, the lost boys and girls, Taiwanese people who escaped, and have commentary on China, and of course the Iranian dissidents who escaped the IRGC. Once we realized their stories are not often heard, we decided to create a digital platform to capture their stories and record them, both in written testimony and filmed. And this started actually November 2025, before the Bondi attack even occurred. We started to collect testimony, and within a month we had over 100 written testimonies submitted across multiple cultures. And then we realized we wanted to do professional filmography, and that's what we've been doing until now. And of course, after the Royal Commission started, the concept of testimony became such a huge a huge thing. So.
And Ms. Whine, in relation to that project, you've said this in your witness statement, that once complete, this archive is intended to become a public and educational resource, and its purpose is to highlight that communities who have lived through persecution, displacement and conflict carry knowledge no institution can replicate, and that they have witnessed the full arc of how social cohesion unravels. Against those remarks, what do you see as the value of capturing this kind of testimony amongst various communities who have experienced various forms of persecution and conflict?
I think amplifying and elevating their voices that are unheard in Australia, but they're carrying stories that matter. And when you hear people's stories, people have empathy. You can't not have empathy when you hear a real life lived experience story. I experienced that. I was part of the steering committee for the book Ruptured, where we captured 36 Jewish women's voices in Australia talking about what's happening post October 7 here for us. And we could see that from the feedback at the time. We had feedback from people within our own Jewish community saying thank you, we feel like our voices are on this page and that we're seen and heard. But we also had feedback from other communities telling us that they had no real understanding of what was going on until they read those stories. And in fact, some people were even saying that they've changed their mind on various things post reading them. So we know that it works. We know that when we hear people's stories, that it cuts through. But we also know that if we tell these stories, it can showcase where things will head if we don't act. Ms.
Mendelle, would you like to further comment on Ms. Whine's answer in relation to the value of this kind of collection of narratives amongst different members of the community?
We think that there's value in a community-led and volunteer-led resource that not only collects these incredibly diverse stories. For example, we just finished filming a Cambodian survivor and a Rwandan survivor. They're based in Sydney. But also, once the stories start to collect, you start to see common themes. In painting these common themes, we can really learn important lessons about how to prevent a degradation of society here in Australia. And many of us from survivor communities, or minority communities, or as the African communities like to say, communities under continual existential threat, we can see the warning signs well before the crisis happens. And I will say, of course, in Australia, the crisis perhaps has happened, but it can get much worse. So whether it's the Iranian dissidents discussing the extremism of the IRGC and the dangers of its influence here, and they were calling out for this and we were helping them raise awareness for this well before even the firebombing of the synagogue, or whether it's a Rwandan genocide survivor describing what led to the genocide and the hate, we can see a common theme emerge that radicalization and extremism is a very dangerous game and that it cannot be ignored. And of course that there is hope.
Ms. Whine, in your witness statement, you've said that you did not set out to become an advocate for diverse communities, but that the 7th of October made you one. And you've also said that you felt that you wanted to be able to do something to stand alongside communities particularly having been acutely aware of those that stood by the Jewish community post the 7th of October. Does the work that you've been doing so far with the Australian Cohesion Forum give you hope for the future?
Yeah, it definitely gives me hope for the future. I think I speak on behalf of many Jewish Australians who are at the point of losing hope. You know, it's been tough to see a society that we've been living in. I'm an Aussie, born and raised here, and I love this country. And what's happened and what we've seen unleashed since October 7 is something that I don't think anyone would have ever imagined. But I think when we work with other communities, we stand by each other, that's the only way to build social cohesion.
And Ms. Mendelle, what do you see as the power that can lie behind diverse communities working together?
I think perhaps there's a lot of, very structured dialogue events and multicultural programs out there. But I always ask myself, well, what happens after that? After the event ends and we all go home, or we've asked someone to stand with us and they're an ally now. Okay, they're an ally now, and what's next? How can we build each other's capacity, share skills, share knowledge? That's the true point of multiculturalism at the end of the day. So by working with, the Hindu community would be my most outstanding example, because we are at that point of actually we've produced something now that is a result of this beautiful relationship. And I do have hope that we can achieve that with many communities, even if there are differences and even if there is conflict. As long as, none of us endorse violence against another community and we don't wish the elimination of another community, we can work together, we can create beautiful things together.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Commissioner.
Yes. Thank you both. Now, wait a moment, I'm just checking. Ms. Keans.